Even the bravest of us loathe war, and those who long for it are the most dangerous. A quote taken from the great king Richard the Lionheart. It was used in times of war. We use it today in the modern day equivalent of battle, the sport of boxing. On April the 23rd, 2022, two men do battle for the most coveted prize in our sport, the heavyweight championship of the world. Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King, the body snatcher Dillian Whyte, in front of 90,000+ fans at Wembley Stadium, all yearning for blood. Both men will contest this contest. Who are both men? What are their backgrounds? How did we get here? Both men come from very different backgrounds. Both men are very different characters. Both men have lived extremely interesting, convoluted lives in which they've both come through adversity, in which they've both had to face challenges both inside and outside of the ring. Both men have had very different, contrasting careers, but yet they find themselves in the ring together. This is the tale of Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. On the 12th of August 1988, Tyson Luke Fury was born to Amber and John Fury. At the time of his birth, he was 3 months premature. He weighed a single pound. The doctors stated it was touch and go as to whether he would even survive. Even then, showing the warrior spirit within him, he was able to pull through. He was named after the current heavyweight champion of the world, Mike Tyson. He was christened Tyson Luke Fury. At the time of his birth, few could have imagined he would go on to be the 6'9" heavyweight champion of the world. But even in his adolescence, he showed signs of the man he would be. Tyson began boxing at age 10, and for the next 10 years, he boxed his way around the amateur system, never really making it to the levels he felt. He felt he was held back due to his heritage, coming from a traveller and gypsy background. In 2008, at the age of 20, he turned over professionally. Tyson Fury in his early pro years was seen as little more than a novelty. He was seen as a fighter who was loud, who was definitely confident, but it was a fighter that many people didn't take serious. His biggest claim to fame early on in his career was him uppercutting himself in the face, which many people used to throw back at Tyson to show that you will never be anything more than a fighter who hits himself. You will never be a heavyweight champion of the world. Why are you here? There are people like David Price who are better than you. Tyson never let any of that criticism get in on him. Rather, he used it as motivation. At 22-0, he stood into the ring for the second time with Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora, no more than a faded contender in his own right, but nevertheless, this was for a mandatory position, a crack at long-reigning heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko. Whilst Tyson Fury was the favourite against Derek Chisora, and so too approved on the night as he went on to stop Derek Chisora, few would have given him a prayer against Vladimir Klitschko. On the 28th of November 2015, Tyson Fury went into the Lion's Den. He went into Dusseldorf, Germany as the underdog. Many pundits did not give this man a prayer, but he went in full of confidence, knowing that on that night he was not to be denied. Vladimir, a master of mind games. Tyson Fury in the build-up refused to play Vladimir's mind games, and in contrast, he played mind games on the champion. Vladimir, a man who expected respect from his opponent. Tyson Fury showed none of it. Tyson Fury mocked the long-reigning champion. Tyson Fury jeered at the long-reigning champion. And in the ring, on that fateful night, Vladimir entered that fight not fully confident. And in the ring, Tyson, confidence at an all-time high, played with the champion for 12 rounds. Whilst it may not have made for compelling viewing, the feints, the movement, the angles bemused the long-reigning champion. And Tyson Fury, in the Lion's Den, had his hand raised The culmination of a lifetime of dedication. On November 28, 2015, Tyson Fury, heavyweight champion of the world. He had reached the top of the mountain. He had dethroned the previous king. It all lay on the shoulders of Tyson Fury. He had reached the summit. But 2 weeks later, a man was about to set foot in the ring at a much lower level for what many believed would be his only real crack at a big time fight. Dillian Whyte at that time was in preparation for a grudge match with amateur rival Anthony Joshua. Born on the 11th of April 1988 in Port Antonio, Jamaica, Dillian Whyte was not destined for great things from very early on in his life. At age 12, his family up sticks and left for London. They settled in Brixton, South London. At age just 13, Dillian Whyte was already a father. At that age, he decided to try and make a better life for him and his young family. He started boxing out of Miguel's gym in Brixton, and his own words, it saved his life. It gave him the best chance of life. To quote Dillian Whyte, he didn't do too well at school, but boxing saved me and changed my life. I knew it was my best chance in life. Boxing. Dillian Whyte did not have an amateur background, and he turned pro in relative obscurity in the year 2011. He did as many young fighters do, fight on the small hall scene, try and make a name for yourself, try and get some exposure in whatever way you can. He got exposure in 2012, albeit for the wrong reason, neglecting to notice the ingredients on a drink. It would prove fatal, as one of the substances in it was on a banned list. Dillian Whyte, early on in his career, now had a 2-year ban imposed on him. At that point, it would have been easy to throw in the white flag. Enough is enough. The sport of boxing doesn't want me. But he didn't. Instead, he served his 2-year ban, and in 2014 was eligible to box again. Went back to what he did before, on the small hall circuit, hoping to make a name for himself, hoping to be the next big thing to come out of Britain. But at this stage, a new, young, vibrant heavyweight who'd recently turned pro in the United Kingdom was making strides. His name was Anthony Joshua. Dillian Whyte knew Anthony Joshua oh too well. They had met in the amateurs, Dillian Whyte coming out victorious. Dillian Whyte looked at Anthony Joshua and thought, I beat you. Why are you there and not me? So too would the grudge match come about. Dillian Whyte was portrayed as little more than a B-side fighter, little more than a small hall fighter, a fighter never destined for great things. Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, the golden boy, the heir apparent to the heavyweight throne. When Tyson Fury was in Dusseldorf, Germany, dethroning Vladimir Klitschko, many people believed that Tyson Fury was a stopgap for those belts to pass eventually to Anthony Joshua. On December 12, 2015, for the British heavyweight title, on pay-per-view, Dillian Whyte met his amateur nemesis, Anthony Joshua, in a fight in which he was ultimately defeated, but a fight in which Dillian Whyte showed what kind of man he is. A warrior, a man who was willing to risk it all, who was willing to take a punch just to land one, and albeit he lost, he was able to stun the young prospect. He was able to make it very uncomfy in there. He was able to silence the critics who said he would be defeated early. Many people believed Anthony Joshua, at a certain level, could not go any fewer than 3 rounds before he would get rid of the opponent. Dillian Whyte ripped that script up. Whilst he did not win, in defeat, he took something. And he was elevated as a result of that loss. 2016, Dillian Whyte regrouped. He rebuilt his career. He based himself in the United Kingdom. He started working with a new trainer in Mark Tibbs. Eddie Hearn saw something in Dillian Whyte and signed him to a deal with Matchroom Boxing. He was featured more prominent on people's undercards, sometimes co-main eventing. In October of that year, he would pick up the British title. Many experts felt it would be as far as Dillian Whyte would go in his career. But Dillian Whyte had other options. Nice to win a British title, but a world title? Is that out of the equation? To Dillian Whyte? Of course not. In December of 2016, he would take on his toughest challenge, following on from the Anthony Joshua loss. He would go in with wily contender, tough rugged Derek Chisora, in a fight that many people felt had come a little bit too soon in the career and the progression of Dillian Whyte. But he took that fight, and whilst he escaped with a split decision win, he left it all in the ring. He was fired up. He had to deal with his opponent's bravado in the build up to the fight, which he did. And he grew in that fight. He went into 2017 full of confidence that maybe this would be the year he gets a crack at the World Heavyweight Championship. In 2017, he had a fight in America. And then in October of that year, he fought on Anthony Joshua's undercard yet again against a contender by the name of Robert Helenius. It was at that point, after that win, he started calling out the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, the feared puncher, the bronze bomber, Deontay Wilder, a feared man with a tremendous right hand, which had knocked out every opponent he'd faced. Dillian Whyte laughed at Deontay Wilder. He wanted that fight. Many people felt if it had happened that Dillian Whyte would have been knocked out early. But he didn't feel that. He felt he could beat him. He showed a great degree of confidence. The fight didn't materialise in 2017, but by 2018, Whyte had forged a path that he had gone from being the undercard fighter to the fighter at the top of the card. He would headline his first Sky Sports bill in March of 2018 against former heavyweight champion Lucas Browne. Many people felt at the time that this would be a very, very tough fight for Dillian Whyte. How would he cope with the punching power of the Australian? We never knew. Dillian Whyte, once again showing improvement, beat Lucas Browne down and knocked him out viciously with a left hook in the 6th round. Again, he called for Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder again paid it little attention. Dillian Whyte stated he wanted the bigger names and the bigger fights. In July of 2018, he got his wish. Whilst it was not for a world title, he would fight former heavyweight champion Joseph Parker in a fight that many deemed to be a risk too far for Dillian Whyte, an unnecessary risk. Dillian Whyte, a man who did not believe in not going through with a fight. The tougher the better. He went into the ring with Joseph Parker, the superior athlete, the superior boxer. But Dillian Whyte went to war. And again, he came out with the win. In 2018, he would take the much anticipated rematch against Derek Chisora. At that point, Dillian Whyte felt it was now or never for a shot at the World Heavyweight Champion, Deontay Wilder. But Deontay Wilder, in December of 2018, he had other ideas. On his radar was Tyson Fury. The 28th of November 2015, the day Tyson Fury became heavyweight champion of the world, the crowning moment of his career. It was a long climb to the top, but the top is a lonely place. And as long as it takes you to climb to the top, the downfall can literally take place overnight. Early 2016, Tyson Fury was showing erratic behaviour. He made comments that were deemed unacceptable in the modern aspect. A witch hunt ensued from media, from groups. They wanted the head of Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury was hounded on his daily runs by reporters asking him various questions. His behaviour began to spiral out of control. He suffered with mental health issues. He suffered from depression. And worst of all, to cope, he turned to alcohol and drugs. By October of that year, he was in no fit state to be anywhere near a boxing ring. He had ballooned in weight to nearly 400 pounds. He was drinking alcohol almost daily. He was intoxicated almost daily, neglecting his family, saying that he wanted no part in boxing. And by the end of 2016, he was out of the sport of boxing. He had lost his titles, not in the ring, but he had been stripped of all his titles. And Tyson Fury, a year prior, heavyweight champion of the world, now was seen as the fallen champion. Not bested by anyone but himself. In 2017, he teased comebacks. He stated he would come back in May of 2017. It never materialised. He was seen in pictures with people like Ricky Hatton, with Joseph Parker, looking at max 400 pounds. No one believed we would see the Gypsy King back in the ring. But in 2018, he started training. He spoke of a moment where he tried to end it all, and in that moment something changed. And Tyson Fury realised what he had to do. He went back training. He lost an enormous amount of weight. And in June of 2018, he set foot in the ring for the first time in over 2 years. It was not the vintage Fury. It was not the Tyson Fury of the Vladimir Klitschko fight. But this was a man who'd been through hell and back. He wanted to take things slow, steady. He would then fight in Belfast in August of that year, in the presence of the current heavyweight champion, Deontay Wilder. This would all culminate in a meeting between Fury and Wilder. December 2018, 3 years on from his historic win over Vladimir Klitschko, he went back into the Lion's Den, this time in America. Not the man he once was, but he fought like the Fury of old, leaving the ring with a draw where the majority of the boxing community felt he had won. It would have been easy to assume Tyson Fury would have gone back to his old habits, that would have been the cataclysm for him returning to his wicked old ways. But Tyson Fury took that and bettered himself for it. In June of 2019, he would set foot in the ring once again, this time against contender and undefeated German heavyweight Tom Schwarz. Tyson Fury wanted to go back in with Deontay Wilder, but he wanted to cultivate the American audience. He wanted to show that he is a star everywhere he goes. He beat Tom Schwarz, and in September of that year, he would fight obscure unknown Swedish heavyweight Otto Wallin, who showed himself to be anything but obscure, giving Tyson Fury one of his toughest fights to date, cutting the champion. Tyson Fury was able to get through it, landing the more eye-catching combinations, landing the flashier shots. Following the win over Otto Wallin, Tyson Fury knew something needed to change if he was to have any chance of beating Deontay Wilder. He changed his training setup. Out was Ben Davison, in was Yvonne Sugar Hill. And in February of 2020, Tyson Fury would do battle once again with Deontay Wilder in what was viewed as a competitive 50-50 fight. Turned out to be anything but. Tyson Fury destroyed the long-reigning champion and proved that he was back. He'd silenced any doubters, coming back from the brink of extinction to now once again rule over the division. But watching that fight was a man who had been targeting Deontay Wilder, but in reality was targeting the WBC Heavyweight Championship. The man was Dillian Whyte. Since defeating Derek Chisora in 2018, Dillian Whyte had consolidated his position as WBC mandatory challenger. He had fought when he needed to, but he watched with curiosity as to who would come out on top between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Once he knew who his eyes were locked on next. However, he had one slight hurdle to overcome. He had accepted a fight with former heavyweight champion Alexander Povetkin, a man who in his heyday was viewed as a very dangerous heavyweight, but at this stage had seen better days and aged significantly, and many people felt Dillian Whyte this was a stopgap on his way to a title shot. Dillian Whyte got too comfortable. Dillian Whyte had it all his own way, and as so often the case in war, one mistake, one lapse in concentration, thinking a war is too easy and wanting to end it, can result in devastating consequences. Many felt after that knockout it was the end of Dillian Whyte. But Dillian Whyte, again, showing his tenacity, showing his character, wanted to go straight back in with Alexander Povetkin. He had to wait 6 months, but in Gibraltar, in March of 2021, Dillian Whyte went in and rematched Alexander Povetkin, knowing full well this time he would not make a mistake, and Dillian Whyte conquered Povetkin in Gibraltar. Watching was Tyson Fury, knowing Dillian Whyte is next in line. But Tyson Fury had other ideas. He wanted all the belts. He wanted Anthony Joshua. But unbeknownst to him, legal matters were going on behind the scene. Former champion Deontay Wilder believed he still had a right to a third fight. And so it was. Deontay Wilder would face Tyson Fury on October 9th, 2021 in a rematch in the trilogy for the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the world. Tyson Fury went back to his old ways, dismissive of Deontay Wilder, not taking him as serious as he had in the past, and he almost paid a catastrophic price for his negligence. With that victory, Fury ended his saga with Deontay Wilder. And now, on the 23rd of April, 2022, he faces a new opponent, Dillian Whyte. Both men, very different backgrounds. Both men have had their trials, their tribulations, challenges they've had to overcome, challenges that lesser men would crumble at. Both men will do battle for boxing's greatest prize. As King Richard III once said, "I shall either win this battle or I shall die as king." Both men will enter battle, but who will leave as king?